Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. It was my sophomore year in high school just a couple of years ago. I'll do my best with the English since it's not my native language. My math teacher, Mr. Jenkins, encouraged me to enter the district math competition because he saw potential in me. I wasn't too fired up about it at the time, but he was my favorite teacher, so I agreed. The day of the competition arrived, and there was this kid, let's call him Aaron, bragging about how he'd stayed up all night studying. It was annoying, but I tried not to let it get to me. When the results came in, Aaron had taken first place, and I was stunned to get second. I was overjoyed, and so was Mr. Jenkins. Everything seemed great until I overheard Aaron's mom, we'll call her Karen. Karen, thank goodness that girl didn't win. I was only 2 points behind Aaron. This is a math competition. My son should be the winner. He worked so hard studying and a girl shouldn't beat him. I was fuming. Mr. Jenkins patted my back, telling me to ignore her nonsense. When they announced my second place finish, Karen started booing loudly. This woman! I couldn't stand it. So I hatched a plan. Mr. Jenkins mentioned that this competition happened yearly, with a regional contest for the winners in the following grade. I vowed to win next year, no matter what. For the entire year, I taught myself advanced math concepts, and my friend Jessica helped me prepare extensively. I spent countless hours reviewing, determined to prove that entitled mother wrong. The following year, I entered the competition, more ready than ever before. Aaron was there too, and his mom loudly proclaimed he'd be winning again after staying up all night studying, already looking forward to regionals. Her arrogance only fueled my drive to outperform him. The test was challenging, but I managed to answer most questions correctly. Meanwhile, Aaron confidently declared it wasn't that hard. I tried to stay hopeful without getting overconfident. Finally, the announcements came. They revealed that only one student in each grade level had scored 40 or above. Aaron smirked smugly, assuming it was him as he turned to Karen, gloating, "Regionals! Here we come!" But to their utter shock, I had won. The looks on Karen and Aaron's faces were priceless. They stood there speechless while Aaron's teacher looked stunned. I flashed them a massive grin as I took the stage to accept my prize and glory. Afterward, I spotted Karen in tears, wailing, "My son was supposed to win! He was going to regionals!" Hearing her anguished sobs made that grueling year of preparation worth every second. I ended up getting second place at regionals and became friends with the first place winner, Michael. Overall, it was an incredible experience, and I'm grateful never to encounter Karen and Aaron again, as there's no math competition in junior year. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my current apartment for about 3 years now. It's in a decent enough neighborhood, and I've never had any major issues with crime or my neighbors. Well, that all changed a few weeks ago when a new tenant moved into the unit next to mine. The first time I ran into this guy, I could tell he was going to be trouble. He just had an arrogant look about him, like he owned the place. I introduced myself and tried to be friendly, but he barely acknowledged me before disappearing into his apartment. A couple days later, I came home from work to find him parked in my designated parking spot. This was my first glimpse at how entitled this guy was. There were plenty of open spots, so it's not like he desperately needed mine. He was just doing it to be a jerk. I knocked on his door and politely asked him to move his car. He gave me attitude, complaining that I was making a big deal over nothing. Reluctantly, he moved his car, but warned me not to start any trouble with him. Yeah, right. Over the next few weeks, he continued to park in my spot occasionally. No matter how many times I asked him to stop, he always had some smug response about it just being a parking spot. Well, one day I'd finally had enough. I left a note on his windshield telling him that if he parked in my spot again, I would have his car towed. I didn't actually want to tow him, but I hoped the threat would make him think twice. Of course, the very next day I came home to see his shiny BMW parked right in my spot. That was the last straw. I called the tow company and watched with satisfaction as they hauled his precious car away. Later that evening, I heard pounding on my door. I opened it to find my neighbor red-faced and screaming expletives at me. "You idiot, how dare you tow my brand new car," he shouted. I pointed out that I had warned him this would happen if he kept parking in my spot. He didn't seem to care. "I can park wherever the hell I want," he yelled, getting in my face. "If you ever touch my car again, you'll regret it." I told him to get away from my door and leave me alone. But he kept screaming threats, saying he knew where I lived and could make my life miserable. That's when he suddenly shoved me hard, causing me to stumble backward into my apartment. Before I could react, he stormed off to his unit, slamming the door loudly. I was shaken up, but otherwise unhurt. Even so, I knew I had to report this guy before things escalated further. I called the police and gave them details about the assault and threats. Luckily, they took it very seriously and said they would send officers right over. 20 minutes later, 2 policemen showed up at my neighbor's door. I watched silently from my peephole as they questioned him about what happened. Of course, he denied everything at first, claiming I was making it all up. But the cops must have scared him into confessing because a few minutes later I saw them slap handcuffs on him and lead him outside. He kept his head down, refusing to make eye contact as they took him away. I later found out he was charged with assault and intimidation. And because he was still on probation for past offenses, he ended up getting locked up for 60 days. I never saw him again after that day. A couple weeks later, a nice older lady moved into his unit. She always makes sure to park in her own spot and is respectful of her neighbors. The whole experience taught me that you really can't predict what kind of people you'll end up living next to. But at least now I know I won't hesitate to stand up for myself if another entitled jerk tries to push me around. This parking spot belongs to me and nobody else. The next one is a petty revenge story. I was at Disney with my family and it was time for the parade. Now everyone usually starts pushing towards the street the parade will be going down, so I had arrived early with 2 other families next to me. One was a white family with 4 kids, the Karens, and the other was a black family with 2 kids. We all stood at the ropes and was getting settled when I noticed the Karen's kid pushing the black family's kids out of the way and the mother, Karen, standing in their way. The mother of the black family was starting to get annoyed and was trying to talk to Karen, who was ignoring her. I decided to step in because 1, she was straight up being so rude, and 2, the other family arrived at the same time as both me and Karen. I told the 2 kids to come up to my kids who were sitting behind the lines and in front of Karen's kids. I'm guessing Karen didn't like that because last I heard was her saying, "How rude people are nowadays," as she took her kids and left in a hurry to find another spot. She must have been unsuccessful because she ended up standing behind me with her kids, which I let stand in front of me so they could see the parade. Karen left so fast after the parade. The other family was so nice afterwards. They took my family's picture in front of the castle as a thank you. It seriously was the weirdest thing I had ever experienced. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A long time ago, in what seems like a different life, I was working in a burrito restaurant on the weekend late shift, simpler times. During a quiet period, we had a gay couple come in to order. They were very nice and respectful with a good bit of banter thrown in. While we're serving them, another person enters and I'm immediately on high alert. This guy looks like a classic Ned. To those not from the west coast of Scotland, this stands for non-educated delinquent. Think a Karen, but more prone to violence than manager asking. Immediately, this guy starts with the homophobic abuse towards the nice couple who we are nearly finished serving, interspersed with some mild nonsense aimed at us. He is quickly told to knock it off and is clearly a little upset at this. The abuse drops to a trickle, but still there, and still an unpleasant individual. The nice couple leaves and we're deciding whether to serve this clown or bounce him. Context: I was a collision sport athlete in excellent shape. He wanted absolutely no part of me. But before we decide, he moves on to stage 2 of the Ned playbook, bragging. I don't feel spice. Nothing can hurt me. Give me the spiciest thing you have, etc. Well now, we used ghost chilies, Naga Jolokia, for our extra hot salsa, so we loaded up a burrito with loads of the stuff, but of course this was not enough for our dear Ned friend. No, because nothing can hurt him. We're obviously not understanding this. Little did he know I'd whipped up a special batch of staff-only extra hot salsa with about 3x the amount of ghost chilies in it. So we tell him about this, and of course it has to go in his burrito, despite our earnings against this. Have we not been listening? He doesn't feel pain. So in goes a generous portion of this nuclear salsa. I know you're thinking we're done here, but no, our dear friend really doesn't think we've understood how little spice affects him. He needs more. Chop a ghost chili into it. We gave him every opportunity to walk back from this demand, but no, he needs pure ghost chili. I bring one up from our store cupboard and chop a little into his burrito. But haven't I been listening? He needs the whole thing. I end up chopping about 3/4 of the thing into it. I'm looking at this insane burrito, worried I might burn a hole in his stomach, but also slightly excited to see this dose of instant karma, but still the bragging hasn't stopped. He won't need a drink. It'll be the mildest thing he's ever eaten. I'm sure you can imagine the rest of his nonsense. He takes the first bite into his burrito and is happily chewing through it, clearly delighted that he was right about the spice level. He's just into his second mouthful when his face changes to concern, followed by surprise, and then utter panic. He's backed himself into a corner and there's no way to win. Tears are streaming down his face at this point, and he very embarrassedly asks for a drink. But of course, Fanta only makes the spice worse. It's now he fully realizes the magnitude of the error he's made. This fire will not go out. He's going to need our genuine help to get through this. He is immediately apologizing humbly and asks if there's something we can do to help. We bring him a large glass of milk so he can at least survive and head off into the night with his tail between his legs. In an unexpected turn, he continues eating the burrito from hell while sipping the milk and somehow manages to finish the whole thing. Still with tears pouring down himself, he thanks us, apologies again, gets a milk reload, and leaves for greener pastures. Despite his unpleasantness, I have to give him props for finishing that burrito. He was not in a good way the entire time, and it was as fitting a punishment as I could have hoped for. The next one is an entitled People's Story. This is one of my favorite stories to tell, so I am sharing my first ever post here. Hope you enjoy for the entertainment value. What is the underlying entitlement? The thrill of harassing a retail worker? Just being an arsehole because you can? Seeing what one can get for less or free? This also has a bit of petty revenge mingled in from a retail hell standpoint. Story is now about 15 years old, so the specific details, prices, are quite faded at this point and are made up, but close enough. My family and I were wrapping up a week-long trip to Disney World staying at the Boardwalk. Teenage kids were in the park, my parents, husband, and I were in the room doing laundry and packing up for the flight home the next day. I have yet to treat myself this trip and haven't had any ice cream. Husband agrees for the need, so the two of us head down to the Boardwalk Sweets shop. As luck would have it, the store was thankfully not crowded, it was fairly late, with one couple in line in front, up us already being helped, and husband and I queue up behind them. There are 3 employees working behind the counter and all seem to be totally preoccupied by the couple in front. This is a mid to late 40s white American man and woman, both well-groomed, neatly dressed in what I would describe as preppy with polos, sweaters tied around necks, boat shoes. The guy was wearing a Boston Red Sox hat, she has a nice handbag. Definitely seem to be vacationers like us. We will call them Karen and Ken for ease of storytelling. I notice that Ken is a bit agitated and is shuffling about nervously looking from Karen, then back to me, then to the store employees and back again. It's at this point I start to pay attention to the conversation in front of me. Karen is trying to negotiate the price of an ice cream cone. In Disney World, I mean, if you need to get a discount on a dessert, maybe you don't go to Disney. We certainly aren't wealthy and save for the trip, but $0.25 off an ice cream cone isn't life-changing in these circumstances. Karen, how much for a cone with 1 scoop? Employee, still $3.50. Karen, what about $3.25? Employee, no. Ken, shifts stance repeatedly. Karen, if I get 2 scoops, can I get it at the same price? Employee, no, it would be more. Ken, glances back awkwardly. Karen, what about 1 scoop in a cup? Employee, still $3.50. Karen, can I get it for $2.50? It's at this point I realize this has been going on for a while, way before we got there, and has continued for a good 5 minutes since we arrived. All 3 employees are just staring at Karen and her antics, quite like a deer caught in headlights. Ken looks like he's going to stroke. My husband at this point bails on me. He, 0 patience, doesn't need ice cream that badly and has said so before leaving. Me, on the other hand, am stubborn and completely fascinated by people watching and relationship dynamics. The laundry can wait, and I really wanted ice cream. Ken seems to be out of his league. He's more geek and less handsome than she is pretty. What's the basis of this relationship? Is it more about marrying for money or status versus love or affection? What's so important about a discount? There doesn't appear to be a financial need. I mean, I am not adverse to helping out when warranted or appreciated. Why the hard sell? So many questions. Finally, one of the employees, oldest of the 3 males, manager or owner, finally snaps out of the Karen show trance and realizes there is another customer to ask me what I want. The other 2 employees are still trying to serve Karen Ken, and I have to step between them to be handed my cone as they are blocking the register area. I am about a foot away from Karen. Me. Thank you. How much? Employee owner. For you, no charge. Karen. Snaps head around to angrily stare in my face. Me. Takes long lick of ice cream. Karen seething. Me. Thank you so much. Entitlement should never get you free ice cream, but sometimes kindness, patience, and a bit of stubbornness will. The next one is an entitled parent story. I posted a few times here about my entitled, abusive, and demanding mother. When we left off, she was mad at me for not reading her mind and inviting her over to my place after she ordered me to come get her leftovers. I couldn't do it, and she snapped. The pent-up anger snapped in me, and I stopped reaching out. That was on the 30th of April. I had an appointment with my psychologist who told me to take a break from the situation and to concentrate on myself and see how I felt about it all. Mother's Day was less than 2 weeks later on the 12th of May. I posted about a few of the past Mother's Days I had with her and how demanding she was of me in those times. It felt good to rant a bit. I didn't reach out to her. She didn't reach out to me. It was peaceful with no expectations. She, however, wasn't happy. She ranted at family that I didn't wish her on that day, and that made me a bad daughter. How selfish and ridiculous I was being. How she did not understand what she did so wrong. Nobody told me anything about it. They were all gossiping amongst themselves. It's just as good for me. I prefer that to flying monkeys. On the 13th, my husband received a text from my mom calling us cruel. He didn't answer. On the 15th, in the afternoon, my mom texted to ask how long I would punish her, and she was sorry that I was angry. She wanted explanations and that she loved me. That night at 11:25, she texted me that she would come see me. That stressed me the duck out. She did not come see me on the 16th. I was anxious all day, as I usually don't do well with confrontation due to my autism and usually shut down. My husband asked me to keep all cameras on during the day just in case. He wanted video evidence if she showed up. When he came back from work, he had a duck it moment, took our son, and went to buy new locks for the house. He installed them the same night. He took our son with him in case she showed up because I didn't want to be alone with my mother and very vulnerable son together. On the 17th, my husband got a call from my brother. Not me, my husband. My brother wanted to know what was going on because he was receiving multiple calls daily about my mother's side of things and wanted my husband's side. My husband asked for a minute as he was at work, called me and asked me what he should say. I told him to tell my brother it was none of his business, but that our mom was well aware of what she did wrong as I told her, and she hadn't apologized. He called my brother and passed on the message. I wasn't contacted. My anxiety wasn't much better. I was spiraling a bit. On the 18th of May, while my husband was trying to sleep off a migraine, my mom showed up out of the blue. She texted me that she was in front of the house. That got me angry, really angry. I had to wake my husband, who didn't look like he should be walking around, ask him to bring our toddler and his playpen to keep him away from windows, and confront my mom. The idiot parked out of earshot of our Ring camera. My husband is certain she did it on purpose. I tend to agree. She was, however, in sight of both our doorbell ring, our front yard camera, my neighbor's cameras, and quite a few of my neighbors whom were out and about. People I know would have interfered if I had yelled. She was acting all sad, like she didn't know what she did. I confronted her, told her I couldn't read minds, told her she always expected me to. She denied it. I pulled out quite a few examples. I told her she was always asking too much of me. She denied it. I gave more examples. She asked if it made her a bad mom. I told her yes. But not as much as hitting us so much she feared the equivalent of our CPS. She denied beating us. It was just moments of craziness. She didn't hit us otherwise. I could have given multiple examples of her bouts of craziness, but her hitting us wasn't that high on my list of what made her a bad mom. Not as much as not only having drugs in the house or making me do illegal stuff as young as a preteen to make her money, sometimes for multiple hours, and telling me at 14 that if I don't do the illegal stuff that we'd lose the house and be homeless. She started crying, not as much as her girlfriend trying to sell me for drugs, with examples. You know her, she was just joking. I told her no. That she does know her, and that she knew it wasn't a joke. Hell, she probably knew at the time that it wasn't a joke, and either way, those are not jokes one should tolerate being said about their minor daughter. Then I told her about her never protecting us from any of her partners. Not from our dad, not from her ex-girlfriend. From no one. She denied it. I brought up that in July last year, her ex threatened to have me and one of my brothers killed, and that she refused to even open a file with police. I didn't have enough proof. Yet a few weeks later, when the very same woman threatened to beat her up, she did go and filled a police report. I reminded her that she knew the woman was insane enough to attempt to take our lives and that I have a baby. She just cried harder, sobbing really. I then told her that she never protected me and that I can't trust her to do the best for or to protect my son. She stopped crying. You know I would protect him like I always protected you. She seemed so offended that I wouldn't trust her with my son. I wanted to punch her, break her nose, make her feel a sliver of the pain she put me through. I walk off into my home. She stayed in her car yelling about me not walking off and to act like an adult. I ignored her. I didn't give a parting comment, didn't look back, and just walked in, locked the door, and went to hug my son and husband. She stayed parked in the street a few minutes and sped off angrily when she realized I wouldn't come back out. I cried a lot. It really was a lot to take in how little she saw of her being a bad mom. Later that night she sent me a text. Here it is in its entirety, roughly translated for it to make sense. Your memories are really biased, love. Except for the events at the store where you and your siblings ended up with red thighs. You were never beaten. I did my best. I never said I had been perfect, but I always tried to protect you the best I could. I'm sorry for being your mom. Now I'll leave you alone. Take good care of yourself. I didn't answer. I spoke to my psychologist. He told me I had two choices because she would never change. I had to accept that this is who my mother would always be, so I either accept her in my life as is, or I kick her from my life. My decision had already been taken, and I decided to go no contact. I know she's not done though, and she will do crazy stuff to get my attention, and decided not to block her. No contact orders are very difficult to get here, and you need a lot of evidence, so I decided not to block her. My psychologist was sure she wouldn't reach out anytime soon. I wished he was right. On the 22nd, my mom sent me another message. She typed in a word per message telling me to contact her when I'm done being psychotic. 9 messages in all. I didn't answer. Now, the reason I'm posting. It's my son's birthday in a week, and she just texted asking, "Can I see my baby name for his birthday?" What do I do if she shows up? Once again, I don't see my psychologist before the birthday. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.